You clicked this video because you already know something's wrong out here. And you're right, this industry is exploiting drivers. And I've got the proof. From 90% turnover to billion-dollar detention theft to lease scams that leave drivers broke. I'm breaking down exactly how the system is rigged to profit off your time, your work, and your silence. Shh, so let's get into it. I literally feel delirious. 14 hours on duty today, and I don't even feel human. Those words are not mine. They're from a fellow trucker on Reddit, burnt out after running hard. He described driving 4 hours empty with no pay, running on no sleep, screaming in frustration. And he's not alone. Here's the hard proof. Most company drivers are making barely half the money drivers made in 1980, once you adjust for inflation. We're working harder and longer than ever, often 70 plus hours a week. Something is seriously wrong here. And today, I'm parked at a rest area, getting ready to go to my delivery at the milk plant. Buckle up, we're about to expose how the trucking industry profits off exploiting drivers like you, and why the whole system seems designed to burn us out. To understand this mess, we need to rewind to 1980. That year, the government deregulated trucking with the Motor Carrier Act, and it flipped the industry on its head. Before 1980, truck driving was often a middle-class career. Most drivers were union, routes were regulated, and a trucker could make a solid living after 1980. All bets were off. Hundreds of new companies flooded in, undercutting each other on rates. As economist Larry Michel put it, this was a conscious decision to make the trucking industry a dog-eat-dog industry. The prices of trucking got cheaper, but the ability to make a living evaporated. Deregulation unleashed cutthroat competition overnight. Freight rates dropped and companies started slashing driver pay just to stay afloat. The result? What used to be a high-quality blue-collar job turned into a race to the bottom. Real wages for truckers plummeted. One analysis found that from 1977 to 1987, driver earnings fell 24%. And since 1980, median trucker pay is down as much as 30 to 35% in real terms. Think about that. A trucker in 1980 might have made $38K a year, which is equivalent to about $130,000 today. But today, the average company driver makes less than half of that. No wonder so many of us feel like we can't get ahead. And it wasn't just pay, working conditions went downhill too. The power of Teamsters Union and collective bargaining collapsed. Over 80% of drivers were union before. Now it's a tiny fraction. Benefits, pensions, job security, much of that faded away. Deregulation basically set the stage for mega carriers to run trucking like a volume business, keep labor costs as low as possible, churn through drivers, and treat us as expendable if we complain. This wasn't by accident. It became the standard business model in big trucking. This competitive landscape effectively eliminated companies' ability to raise pay, embedding high turnover as a standard business strategy. An OOIDA Foundation report noted, explaining how after deregulation, big carriers stopped giving meaningful raises because if they did, a competitor would just undercut them. With so many new carriers and a fragmented market, there was no incentive to improve driver pay or conditions. If one driver quits, another newbie is waiting to fill that seat. And that's exactly what we've been seeing for decades since. Piece rate pay, if the wheels ain't turning, you ain't earning. Now let's talk about how we're paid, because the pay structure itself is a huge part of the exploitation. Most company drivers, especially in long haul, are paid by the mile. Basically a piece rate. If you're not actively driving, you're typically not getting paid. That means all the other work we do, loading, unloading, waiting at shippers, sitting in traffic, doing inspections, fueling, even just waiting for a dispatch, is often uncompensated time. Meanwhile, the companies are profiting off our downtime. The shipper doesn't have their load ready? Too bad. The carrier might even charge them a fee, detention pay. But guess how much the driver usually sees? Little or nothing. Many drivers, especially at smaller companies, don't even ask for detention pay because they fear angering the dispatcher or losing loads. It's a culture of shut up and deal with it. And since we're paid by the mile, every hour sitting is an hour of lost income and often lost sleep. We're forced to absorb the inefficiencies of shippers, receivers, and dispatch scheduling. Essentially, the industry has externalized its cost onto drivers. Our time has been deemed worthless unless it's directly turned in revenue. And this pay model ties into safety too. Because if a driver has been sitting unpaid for 5 hours, once they finally get loaded, you bet they feel pressure to make up time. That can lead to driving while fatigued or pushing limits, all so we can salvage a decent paycheck. It's a vicious cycle. Piece rate pay incentivizes us to work longer and take more risk. And it incentivizes companies to overschedule and squeeze every drop of blood from us. Since they're not paying for time, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations even have an overtime pay exemption for truckers, meaning carriers are exempt from paying us overtime no matter how many hours we work in a week. Yes, unlike most other professions, we have no right to time and a half pay after 40 hours. A company can legally work a driver 60 to 70 hours a week, the maximum allowed by hours of service, with no overtime pay at all. That's an enormous cost savings for them and a huge hit to us, what our time is worth. In practice, many truckers end up earning less per hour than fast food workers when you do the math. Between unpaid detention and the overtime loophole, it's no surprise a lot of drivers feel cheated. One veteran driver on a forum put it like this: it doesn't really matter how many free snacks or free Diet Cokes you get in the driver lounge. If you're sitting for hours, that's money out of your pocket. Many shippers are lax about loading, but it's carriers and drivers who pay for that inefficiency. It's a lack of respect for our time, pure and simple. Now combine that pay structure with how dispatch works at many large carriers, a lot of company drivers face what's known as forced dispatch. Were you wondering what I was doing pounding that hammer in the beginning of this video? Well, real quick, I busted a drive tire. It was a reed tread cap going down the highway on I-94. It sounded like a bomb. It literally took off my little fender thing I have over my chain racks, and it did a bunch of other damage. But let's get back into the video. That means you don't really have a right to refuse a load. Sure, the recruiter might have promised no forced dispatch, but in reality, if you turn down loads, you'll get sat or even fired. As one Reddit trucker bluntly explained, almost all companies have forced dispatch by written agreement. If the job has to get done, it has to get done. No forced dispatch is usually BS. What does this look like on the ground? It means you could be dog tired, out of hours till midnight, and your dispatcher is already planning on sending you out the second your 10-hour break is up. If you say, no, I need more rest, or I can't make that run safely, dude, you risk being written up or labeled as not a team player. Some drivers have even reported being coerced to bend the rules. Despite FMCSA having rules against coercion, it's technically illegal for a company to force you to break safety regulations. But they skate just on the edge. They might not tell you to violate HOS, but they'll imply that load must be there on time. Figure it out. The message is clear. Get it done or we'll find someone who will. Forced dispatch also means you have zero control over your life. You can't plan when you'll be home. You can't refuse a load to, say, the Northeast if you hate New York City traffic. If dispatch sends it, you're going, period. Many mega carriers even have policies that you cannot turn down a load unless you physically cannot do it legally. And if you do refuse one, you might get punished with a couple days of no loads. They'll say, nothing available. Yeah, right. Which hits your paycheck. They've got all the power and they know. The culture leads to stories like the one earlier. A driver telling his boss he's burnt out and needs a local route. Boss says, no openings, man, just gotta keep running, and proceeds to run him into the ground day after day. The driver wrote, they turned and burned me so much this week, I literally feel delirious. I want to quit so bad, but feel stuck. That stuck feeling is exactly what the companies bank on. They expect you to just swallow your pain and keep moving. I came across another comment that hits hard. You're expected to eat crap, sacrifice your body and free time, expand all your energy at work, and if you value home, time with your family, you're a poor employee. Balance is good on paper only. Too many people seem to enjoy the boot on our necks. We just prayed to make it to retirement in one piece. That was a trucker describing the reality at many outfits. It's a strong statement, and yeah, he used a 4-letter word, but he's expressing the frustration so many of us feel. This job can take over your life. Weeks on the road, missing birthdays and holidays, sleeping in random lots, eating junk, gaining weight, wrecking your back, and the company's attitude is often, well, you signed up for this. If you can't hack it, there's the door. It's an almost militaristic, suck it up culture. And it directly ties into why drivers quit in droves. There's a lack of respect. Drivers are often treated like they're just a steering wheel, holder number in a system. Dispatch screws up, driver gets blamed. Load isn't ready, driver sits for free. Truck breaks down, driver's often stuck on the side of the road for hours. And then after all that, management wonders why morale is low. All these factors, low pay, unpaid time, exhausting hours, little respect, lead to one inevitable result: sky-high turnover. Drivers quit constantly. You've probably heard stats thrown around, and I'm here to tell you, they're true. At many large truckload carriers, the annual driver turnover rate is over 90%. Yes, 90%. That means every year, almost the entire driver workforce is new. It's like a revolving door. 100 drivers hired, 90 quit within a year. In fact, the average annual turnover in long-haul trucking has been around 90 to 95% for decades. This is not because all those drivers couldn't cut it. It's because of everything we've talked about. People get fed up and leave. They either hop to another carrier hoping it's better, or they leave trucking entirely. And guess what? The big carriers almost expect this. They have entire recruiting teams and academies churning out fresh trainees continuously. High turnover has become the standard operating model for mega carriers. It's cheaper for them to just hire a new naive trainee at entry-level pay than to significantly raise pay for existing experienced drivers. Now, you'd think from a business perspective, 90% turnover is terrible. Any other industry would panic if nearly all employees quit each year. But trucking has this perverse situation where they manage to normalize it. How? In part by pushing the narrative of a driver shortage. You hear it on the news. America is short 80,000 truck drivers, etc. The industry, especially the big trade groups like the ATA, loves to blast this message. It creates a convenient cover. Instead of admitting we cannot retain drivers because conditions are bad, they say, oh, nobody wants to work these jobs. There's just a shortage. We need more drivers. But here's the thing, that driver shortage is a myth. Don't just take my word for it. Multiple studies, including a 2024 report by the National Academies of Sciences, have debunked the shortage claims. The NAS study basically said the idea of a persistent shortage goes against basic economics. In a true labor shortage, what happens? Pay goes up to attract talent. In trucking, the industry kept claiming shortage for years, but did not significantly raise pay or improve jobs. Why? Because they actually had plenty of people to fill seats. They just could not keep them. Anytime there's a hint of tightening capacity, instead of raising driver pay broadly, big carriers go lobby for lowering the hiring age, or getting government grants for CDL training, or bringing in drivers from abroad. Anything but genuinely improving the job. Here's a statistic that blows the shortage narrative out of the water. The OOIDA Foundation found that around 400,000 new Class A CDLs are issued each year in the United States over a 5-year span. That's roughly 2 million drivers entering the market, yet the number of active long-haul truck driving jobs is only about $800,000 to $900,000 at any given time. Do the math. That's roughly 3 new qualified drivers for every job opening. For every one of those jobs, there are 2 extra licensed people either working elsewhere or who tried trucking and left. 3 CDL holders for every seat. If there truly was a shortage, we would not have a surplus of qualified people like that. What's happening is churn. New drivers come in, get burned, and many quit. The industry then screams, shortage, and gets funding for more recruits. It's a self-perpetuating cycle, as the OOIDA report bluntly put it. Trucking's empty seats are a symptom, and the cause is why drivers quit. Companies do not want to confront that cause because it would mean raising wages, addressing unpaid time, improving conditions. In short, treating drivers better, which might shave a bit off their short-term profits. Instead, they find it easier to keep the churn going. Here's a little twist for you. This churn machine is so embedded that even good actors in the industry unwittingly rely on it. How? Well, consider smaller or mid-sized fleets that offer better conditions. Where do many of their experienced drivers come from? From the big carriers. After those drivers quit the mega fleets, the OOIDA Foundation pointed out something startling. Mega carriers produce a surplus of trained drivers who often leave. Small fleets then hire some of those more experienced drivers. If turnover at big fleets miraculously stopped, it would actually starve smaller fleets of their talent pipeline. Even carriers that treat drivers better are indirectly reliant on the churn at the bottom end of the industry. It's a bizarre ecosystem where churn at one level feeds the next. In other words, the entire system has been structured around churn. That is insane, folks. Good companies should be able to find drivers without relying on bigger companies abusing them first. But that's how it is. The churn is systemic, not just a matter of a few bad companies. It's like a pyramid. Mega carriers chew up newbies, cheap labor, spit them out. Those who stick around often jump to better companies or become owner-operators. The mega carriers just grab another batch of new recruits, and the cycle continues. Meanwhile, the industry keeps crying, shortage, to keep that pipeline of new entrants, often lured in by misleading promises, flowing. Let's list out why this problem hasn't fixed itself. Why normal market forces have not raised driver pay despite so-called shortages. Cutthroat competition. Since deregulation, trucking has so many carriers competing on thin margins that no one wants to raise pay and lose bids. It's a race to pay as little as possible. And then labor supply gluttony. Industry and even government programs keep funneling new drivers into trucking, CDL mills, driver schools, etc., artificially inflating the supply of drivers. Too many drivers available equals lower wages, basic economics, overtime and labor loopholes. The FLSA overtime exemption means no time and a half pay, which effectively robs drivers of fair compensation for long hours. Also, shady companies misclassify company drivers as 1099 contractors to avoid paying taxes and benefits, further driving down labor costs. Limited bargaining power. Drivers are fragmented and mostly not unionized now. When you're one person against a megacorp, it's hard to negotiate better terms. Companies know this and take advantage of it. False promises and info asymmetry. There's a constant marketing that trucking is this great opportunity. Make $100,000 your first year, which is usually BS. Many new drivers enter with misconceptions about earnings and life on the road, often fed by rosy recruiter pitches. When reality hits, low pay, long hours, they quit. And then the cycle repeats with the next recruit. All of this mutes the normal market corrections that should improve the job. And instead of companies raising pay and fixing conditions to attract and keep drivers, they've found ways to keep trucking a churn and burn game. As long as they can keep seats filled with new bodies, even if only for a short while, the system rolls on. And the sad truth is, some companies actually profit from turnover. Training new drivers can be a revenue stream, charging for CDL training or contract penalties. And new drivers start at lower pay tiers. Experienced drivers who demand higher pay leave and get replaced by rookies on starter pay. From a pure cost standpoint, it can appear cheaper until you account for the hidden costs like safety and service, which many of these carriers have been historically willing to risk. At this point, you may be thinking, well, why not become an owner-operator and escape this grind? Be your own boss, make more money. That's the dream a lot of us have. I've thought it myself and I did it. And don't get me wrong, being an independent owner-operator works out great for some, but it can also be a huge trap, especially the way many carriers present it. I'm talking about those lease purchase programs that big carriers advertise. No money down, walk away lease, become an owner operator today. They make it sound like a golden ticket. You sign a lease on a truck from the company, run under their authority as an independent contractor, and eventually own the truck. In reality, many of these deals are predatory. How bad? A 2023 FMCSA truck leasing task force looked into it and straight up called lease purchase programs irredeemable tools of fraud and driver oppression. In their report, they noted these leases fail more than 90% of the time, meaning over 90% of drivers never actually complete the lease to own the truck. Instead, they end up turning in the truck or getting it repossessed, often after paying tens of thousands of dollars into it. That task force with OOIDA support is even recommending Congress ban lease purchase programs outright, which tells you how abusive they found them. Why are they so bad? Typically, the carriers control everything. They're your truck dealership, your lender, and your dispatcher all in one. They often take out truck payments, insurance, maintenance, escrow, etc. from your settlement. The lease contracts can be loaded with fine print that favors the company. If freight slows down or you cannot get enough miles, tough luck. You still owe that weekly truck payment. If you want to quit, you usually lose the truck and all the equity you thought you were building. The task force report said these programs systematically exploit truckers without providing a path to ownership, and noted that drivers make payments but accrue no equity. They likened it to sharecropping, where you work someone else's land, or truck in this case, hoping for freedom that rarely comes. I've heard horror stories, drivers ending a lease with nothing to show but debt, or even owing that company money for maintenance or fees. One quote from that report stood out. Drivers are drawn in thinking hard work guarantees success, but predatory leases prey on that trust, leaving drivers financially and emotionally broken. That was from OOIDA's president, Todd Spencer. And a consumer protection staffer said, with the 90% failure rate, these programs are designed to fail, not by accident, but by intent, designed to fail. Let that sink in. Now, not every lease purchase is evil. A few people do succeed or say their lease deal was fair. But by and large, if a mega carrier is pushing you to lease one of their trucks as an opportunity, it's probably more of an opportunity for them than for you. They shift almost all operating costs and risk to the driver: fuel, maintenance, insurance, truck payments, while still keeping a ton of control. You often end up working even harder than a company driver because now you've got a huge payment hanging over your head. I've seen drivers basically living in the truck, not taking any home time for months, just trying to survive a lease. And when freight rates drop or an unexpected repair hits, game over. In many cases, the company gets the truck back to re-lease to the next guy, and you're left with empty pockets. I mentioned these lease operator traps as a contrast. Whether you are a company driver or a lease operator, the mega carriers find a way to exploit your labor. As a company driver, they exploit your time. As a lease operator, they often exploit your wallet and dreams of ownership. It's exploitation in different clothing. So be wary of anyone who says, oh, you're not happy as a company driver? Just lease a truck from us and you'll earn big money. Do your homework and talk to folks who've been through it. The feds are finally acknowledging a lot of those deals are basically scams. So where does this leave us? It's easy to feel discouraged. The trucking industry as it stands has been built on a model that profits off our sweat, sacrifice, and silence. The big players have little incentive to change as long as the money keeps rolling in and we keep filling seats. But here's my takeaway. Knowledge is power. By exposing these truths, by putting real numbers and real stories to the problems, we can start to demand better. Remember, we are the backbone of this industry. Without drivers, those trucks don't move and the country doesn't run. The industry wants to keep us divided, isolated, and thinking that each of us is alone in feeling this way. But as we've seen, you are not alone. Far from it. When 90% of drivers at some carriers quit each year, that's not a personal failing. That's systemic abuse. When a job that used to comfortably support a family now barely pays the bills, that's not just how it is, that's by design, and it can be redesigned if enough of us push back. There are signs of hope. Groups like OOIDA and others are fighting to end exploitative practices, like those predatory leases, and pushing for things like overtime pay for truckers. Some legislators and researchers are waking up to the fact that just hire more drivers is not a solution. Retaining experienced drivers by making this a decent career is. Even some shippers are realizing they cannot treat drivers like garbage without consequences. And importantly, drivers are speaking out on forums, on YouTube, on social media. We're comparing notes and finding out, hey, it's not just me. That's the first step to any change. To every company driver watching this who feels stuck in that grind, I see you. I've been there, and I want you to know you deserve better. You deserve to be paid for every hour you work, to have a life outside the truck, and to be treated with respect as a skilled professional, not a cost to be minimized. Don't let them convince you that you're asking for too much. A safe, experienced driver is worth their weight in gold in this industry, even if the mega carriers' balance sheets don't reflect it yet. Now, I want to hear from you. If you're a driver or former driver who's felt exploited, maybe you've endured endless unpaid waiting, or crazy dispatch demands, or got burned by a lease deal. Share your story in the comments down below. How have you seen this industry take advantage of drivers? What needs to change first? By speaking up and sharing, we not only let off some steam, we also let the world know what's really going on out here on the road. Drivers, let's support each other. The trucking industry might be built on exploiting drivers right now, but it doesn't have to stay that way. Change is going to require a lot of noise from drivers, from our families, even from customers who realize that treating drivers better is in everyone's interest. Safer roads, more reliable deliveries. I hope this video has been an eye-opener and maybe even a rallying cry. We have the proof of what's wrong. Now it's about pushing for what's right. Stay safe out there, drivers. Keep the rubber side down, and remember, you're not just a cog in their machine. You're the one who keeps that machine running, and you have the power to demand the respect and conditions you deserve. Until next time, drive safe and take care of yourself. And don't forget to hit that like button if this hit home. And please subscribe for more real talk from the road. Leave your comments down below. I'm reading all of them. Let's make our voices heard. Keep on trucking on our terms.